Well, I don't think I can be that eloquent, so I won't try. Prime Minister, Master of Ceremonies, Deputy Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Dave Marguerite, and my cabinet colleagues, friends, all, but in particular on this occasion, the members of the family. So one of the things I'd like to do is formally, as the chair of the Progressive Liberal Party, to thank you for allowing this service to take place of Thanksgiving for a life well lived, for a good public servant who made a sterling contribution to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and to the Progressive Liberal Party. I was 10 years old on the 22nd of November 1963 when Jack Kennedy was shot dead in Dallas, Texas. And that is the first time I believe that I took cognizance of a sudden death, and for someone in public life. And then after that, there was a man named Robert King High, who was the mayor of Miami, who died in 1967. He was 43. Robert Kennedy was shot dead in 1968. Martin Luther King was shot dead in 1968. Clarence Bain died in office in 1971. Shadrach Morris died in 1982 in office. Chuck Virgil died in 1997. And now, Obie Wilchcombe, a sudden death in 2021. You're listening. The point I make is, to me, no matter when these things occur, it just strikes you as unreal, that you can't believe it. Someone who's been so vibrant, so encouraging, so supporting, and such a leading light has suddenly gone out. And this happened hard on the heels of a very difficult call that I got the night before when we learned that Keith Bell's wife had also passed away suddenly. And you ask yourself, how does this happen, or why does it happen? But Psalm 90 says we spend our years as a tale that is told. And you've heard tonight what a wonderful tale we can tell of a life well lived. And in and around 1977, I was asked by the then Prime Minister, Right Honorable Pindling, to join the Broadcasting Corporation as its Director of Public Affairs, and then a year later as Director of News and Public Affairs. And it's in that job, having traveled to Freeport, that I met Obie Wilchcombe for the first time. He's 6 years or so younger than I am. An engaging young man who was so supportive. I think he actually loaned me his car the whole time I was there, the first trip. Dennis Martin told me as I was speeding through 8 Mile Rock that there's a law that you're not supposed to speed through the settlement roads, so I learned that. But he was helpful to a fault. What I thought, though, was here was an extraordinarily talented young man whose talents were being underutilized in the Northern Service in Freeport. So in the position that I was as Director of News and Public Affairs, I thought it was a good idea for him to move to Nassau, which he did. And he served with distinction and ultimately became Director of News himself and an Assistant General Manager. But of course, you see from all those who have gone into public life, ZNS is a breeding ground for politicians. So, Vice Will Forbes, Kelsey Johnson, Charles Carter, Vaughn Miller. Is he here tonight? All through ZNS. And one of the things, of course, that happened is he was joined me in, I guess that must have been 78 or 79. We went and took this trip. I was then, after the 77 election, I was named the National General Council member for Clarence Town, which was the name of the constituency. It was called South, which is now South Long Island, south of Thompson Bay. It was then. So anyway, Prime Minister Pindling, after the election was over, said, "You're going to be the NGC member." So I went down to do branch elections in the Clarence Town constituency. And I took Obie with me, and we went to Long Island, and I always tease him about this. He's not here to be able to contradict it, so I can say it openly. He jumps off the plane, because Grand Bahama is a real flat island. He jumps off the plane, and he looks back, and he sees these hills in Long Island. And he says, "Fred, they've got mountains in Long Island." And then we go to this meeting. It's just about, it's a few years after independence. And so we start the meeting. And someone says, "Would you raise the national anthem, please?" So they all get up. And then they say, "God save our gracious," and someone says, no, not that one, not that one. They got a new one. And so we're sitting there, and Obie is speaking, and this man is sitting in the front row, and he's looking very intently at Obie, and as Obie says something, he says, "Boy, that sounds good. Let's clap for that." We had a great time on that trip. He was later introduced to Sir Lynden, and they became fast friends. Close like brothers, like father and son. And it was a good relationship, and as you've heard already, he was a keeper of the gate and of the history and of the archives, and he knew it well. So politics was in his blood, and it was a natural, because those of you who knew his dad, Jackson, knew that he was an activist in Grand Bahama. And when the Prime Minister comes up, he can tell you all the stories about how Jackson led the revolt in the Progressive Liberal Party to maintain the independence of Grand Bahama PLPs, let's put it that way. But Jackson was a fiery, fiery activist, and Obie really loved his father, and admired his contribution. So what do we say now that he's passed away? We must say, first of all, thank you. Thank you to him for a life well lived, and for the contribution which he made to our country and to the Progressive Liberal Party. Thank you on all fronts. He sat next to me in the cabinet, so that chair is now empty. And I had two friends that I can say in politics that understood. Mrs. Hannah Martin spoke about the humor which he had, about what the British call taking the mickey out of politics. Because had we been here, we'd probably be sitting in the back of the room, making fun of all the speakers and what they were saying. And one of them was Paul Adderley, and the other was Obie Wilchcombe. We had great times at occasions like this. So our life is a tale that is told. We spend it as a tale that is told, and I'm deeply grateful to this family for allowing this tribute, for allowing me to say these few words. To say we'll miss him is a gross understatement, because he made such a valued and valuable contribution to this party and to where we are today. Thank you, family. We send him to God and say, may he rest in peace.
Prime Minister David.